Two air forces locked in a brutal race for the skies. Germany fielded fast interceptors and jet fighters. America mass-produced bombers and long-range escorts. Both sides claim superiority. But when doctrine meets reality, who actually wins? Music. This is German aircraft versus American aircraft in World War II, starting off with early warfighters. Messerschmitt Bf-109 versus the P-40 Warhawk. The 109 enters 1939 as the Luftwaffe's backbone. Fast climb rate, good turn performance below 20,000 feet, and a proven 20 mm cannon. It dominated Poland and France with speed and altitude advantage. German pilots used the energy tactics perfected in Spain, climbing above enemy formations and diving through them with devastating effect. The P-40 shows up later with decent low-altitude speed and heavy 50 cal armament. Curtiss designed it as an export fighter, and it ended up everywhere from North Africa to China. The problem is altitude. The 109 consistently outclimbs the Warhawk above 15,000 feet. The supercharger on the Allison engine simply cannot compete with the German fuel injection system at high altitude. In North Africa, P-40 pilots learned to dive, shoot, and run. They avoided turning fights and used hit-and-run tactics to survive. The 109 wins the climb fight every single time. The P-40 survives by refusing to play that game. American pilots compensated with better situational awareness and numerical superiority as the war progressed. Moving on to the workhorses, Focke-Wulf FW-190 versus the P-47 Thunderbolt. The FW-190 hits the front in 1941 as the Butcher Bird. Pilots loved the visibility from the bubble canopy, the firepower from 4 20mm cannons and 2 machine guns, and the roll rate that let them escape almost any situation. It could shred bombers with a single pass and outfight early Spitfires at medium altitude. Kurt Tank designed it with a radial engine, making it less vulnerable to coolant leaks that plagued liquid-cooled fighters. Then, America drops the jug. The P-47 is a 7-ton monster with 8 50 caliber machine guns and enough fuel to escort bombers deep into Germany. It features a massive turbo supercharger that gives it excellent high-altitude performance. The FW-190 is nimble and deadly in a knife fight. The Thunderbolt is not nimble. It's a flying tank. But the P-47 dives like a meteor, absorbs damage from 20mm cannon hits without going down, and never runs out of ammunition during extended engagements. German pilots quickly learned that shooting down a Thunderbolt required multiple passes and perfect shot placement. The FW-190 wins the dogfight below 20,000 feet, where its agility dominates. The P-47 wins the escort mission because it actually gets there, protects the bombers, and comes home with half its tail shot off. Continuing with high-altitude interceptors, the Messerschmitt Bf-109G versus the P-51 Mustang. The 109 Gustav model in 1943 pushes performance with a more powerful DB-605 engine. It climbs well, fights well, and remains lethal in experienced hands. Late war versions featured more armor and heavier armament, though this added weight hurt performance. German production kept the 109 in service until the very end because the factories could build it quickly and mechanics could repair it easily. The Mustang arrives late, but changes everything. Drop tanks, a Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, and range that covers Berlin and back. North American Aviation originally designed it with an Allison engine that performed poorly at altitude. The British suggestion to install the Merlin transformed it into arguably the best piston fighter of the war. The 109 is faster in the climb and can gain altitude advantage in the opening moments of combat. The Mustang is faster in level flight and the dive, and it can sustain high speeds without overheating. Crucially, the Mustang stays with the bombers for the entire raid. German pilots lose the endurance battle. They can bounce one raid, land for fuel and ammunition, and that's it for the day. American fighters circle over the target until the bombers leave. They have the fuel to hunt for targets of opportunity on the way home. The P-51 doesn't win every dogfight, Experienced Luftwaffe pilots still scored kills against Mustangs throughout 1944 and 1945, but it wins the war of attrition because it destroys the Luftwaffe's ability to defend German airspace consistently. Now the jet revolution. Messerschmitt Me 262 Schwalbe. This is the world's first operational jet fighter. Entering service in 1944, it flies 100 mph, faster than anything the Allies can field. 4 30mm cannons shred bombers in seconds. The R-4M rockets can take down a B-17 from outside defensive gun range. Allied pilots openly admit they cannot catch it in level flight. The acceleration is stunning. The surprise is total. American bomber crews watched the 262 flash past at 540 mph. Far too fast for turret gunners to track effectively. The problem is numbers and logistics. Germany built 1,400 of them. America kept building 15,000 piston engine fighters. The Me-262 also needs long runways because jet engines of the era have poor acceleration at takeoff. It requires constant maintenance because the Jumo RI-04 turbojets wear out after 25 hours of operation. And it demands experienced pilots who can manage the fuel-hungry engines and avoid flaming out during combat maneuvers. The Luftwaffe has none of these resources in quantity. By late 1944, Allied fighters simply wait near German airfields and shoot the jets during takeoff and landing when they're slow, vulnerable, and cannot maneuver effectively. Operation Bodenplatte and similar efforts to protect jet bases with conventional fighters failed due to fuel shortages and pilot losses. The 262 wins almost every individual engagement when it has speed and altitude. It loses the strategic air war because there are never enough of them flying at the same time to stop the bomber streams. Let's look at ground attack aircraft, the Focke-Wulf FW-190F versus the P-47 Thunderbolt in the ground attack role. The FW-190F was the dedicated ground attack variant. It carried bombs, rockets, and heavy armor on the underside to protect against ground fire. German pilots used it extensively on the Eastern Front, where Soviet air defenses were heavy and deadly. The aircraft could take punishment and deliver devastating firepower against Soviet tanks and truck columns. The problem is endurance. The FW-190F has limited range and requires bases close to the front lines. Allied bombing campaigns destroyed these forward airfields repeatedly. The P-47 in ground attack mode became a terror weapon. 8 50-caliber machine guns could destroy soft targets with ease. High-velocity rounds penetrated truck engines, railroad cars, and even light armor. American pilots developed skip bombing techniques and rocket attacks that devastated German supply columns retreating across France. The Thunderbolt's range meant it could patrol far behind enemy lines, hitting targets that German fighters couldn't reach, and returning safely. The FW-190F is the superior close support aircraft in terms of weapon load and armor protection. The P-47 is the superior interdiction fighter because it goes deeper, stays longer, and comes home. And finally, bomber comparison. Germany's Junkers Ju-88 versus America's B-17 Flying Fortress. The Ju-88 is fast, versatile, and capable of dive bombing, level bombing, night fighting, and reconnaissance. Germany uses it everywhere from the Arctic convoys to North Africa. It's the Wehrmacht's most produced aircraft because it does everything reasonably well. The crew appreciates the speed, which lets them escape interception when flown correctly. The problem is payload and range. The Ju-88 carries roughly 4,000 pounds of bombs over medium distances. It cannot reach deep strategic targets and returns safely. The defensive armament is limited, making it vulnerable to fighters when caught. The B-17 carries 8,000 pounds of bombs, operates at 25,000 feet in formation, and features heavy defensive armament with 10 50-caliber machine guns. Boeing designed it specifically for daylight strategic bombing. The defensive firepower from a combat box formation of B-17s creates overlapping fields of fire that German fighters must penetrate. American doctrine emphasizes formation integrity over individual survival. German bombers rely on speed and evasion to survive. American bombers rely on formation flying, overwhelming defensive firepower, and fighter escort to complete the mission. The Ju-88 is the better tactical bomber for hitting battlefield targets and supporting ground forces. The B-17 is the better strategic weapon because it can reach deep into Germany, absorb brutal punishment from flak and fighters, and still deliver its payload on target. Now let's compare night fighters. The Heinkel He-219 Uhu versus American night operations. The He-219 was Germany's most effective dedicated night fighter. It featured radar, upward-firing cannons, and excellent performance at altitude. German pilots used it to hunt RAF bombers over Germany with devastating success. The aircraft could climb to intercept altitude quickly and had the endurance to patrol for hours. The problem is production numbers. Germany built fewer than 300 because resources went to day fighters and jets. American forces didn't field a dedicated night fighter in the European theater in significant numbers. They relied on radar-equipped P-61 Black Widows in limited quantities and modified P-38 Lightnings. The Americans won the night war through different means: electronic countermeasures, chaff, and overwhelming numbers of bombers that saturated German defenses. The He-219 wins individual engagements when it finds a target. The Allies win the night bombing campaign because German night fighters cannot stop 800 bombers from reaching their targets. Moving on to reconnaissance. The Messerschmitt Me-262 in reconnaissance configuration versus the F-5 Lightning, the photo reconnaissance variant of the P-38. The Mi-262 reconnaissance version was nearly impossible to intercept. Its speed allowed it to photograph Allied positions without risk. German intelligence used these photos to track invasion preparations and bomb damage assessment. The limitation is that jets need good weather and long runways, restricting their operational flexibility. The F-5 Lightning strips out armament for cameras and extra fuel. It operates at high altitude where it's difficult to intercept. And its twin-engine reliability brings pilots home even with battle damage. American photo reconnaissance missions flew constantly, building comprehensive intelligence pictures of German industry, transportation, and military positions. The Mi-262 reconnaissance variant is untouchable when airborne. The F-5 provides consistent, reliable intelligence that actually reaches the command structure because the aircraft comes home. Continuing with dive bombers. The Junkers Ju-87 Stuka versus the Douglas SBD Dauntless. The Stuka is the iconic dive bomber of the early war. Its pinpoint accuracy and psychological impact made it terrifying during the Blitzkrieg campaigns. The distinctive siren, called the Jericho trumpet, broke enemy morale. The aircraft could place bombs within meters of the target. The problem is speed and defensive armament. Once the Allies achieved air superiority, the Stuka became a death trap. Its slow speed made it easy prey for fighters. The SBD Dauntless was America's carrier-based dive bomber that won the Battle of Midway. It combined decent speed, good dive characteristics, and enough defensive armament to have a chance against fighters. The Dauntless sank more Japanese shipping than any other aircraft. Its reliability and accuracy made it the standard for carrier operations. The Stuka is the more accurate dive bomber in ideal conditions with air superiority. The Dauntless is the bomber that actually survives to complete multiple missions in contested airspace. And finally, heavy bombers. The Heinkel He-177 Greif versus the B-24 Liberator. The He-177 was Germany's only four-engine heavy bomber. On paper, it had the range and payload for strategic bombing. In reality, the coupled engines overheated constantly, causing fires that killed crews. Mechanical reliability was so poor that operational rates stayed below 50%. Germany never developed a true strategic bomber force. The B-24 Liberator was America's most produced heavy bomber. It carried similar bomb loads to the B-17 but had longer range, making it ideal for striking oil refineries in Romania and submarine pens in France. The high-altitude performance and defensive armament kept losses manageable. The He-177 fails as a strategic bomber because it cannot stay airborne reliably. The B-24 succeeds because American industry built 18,000 of them and kept them flying. The verdict comes down to mission and context. German fighters win most dogfights below 20,000 feet in 1940 through 1942. Superior training, energy tactics, and aircraft performance give them the edge. American fighters win the escort war from 1943 onward because of range, numbers, and industrial output. Germany fields faster, more maneuverable aircraft with better climb rates and armament. America fields aircraft that complete the mission, protect the bombers, and return home to fly again tomorrow. The Luftwaffe builds exceptional machines flown by increasingly inexperienced pilots with limited fuel. The USAAF builds an air force that overwhelms the battlefield with numbers, replaces losses immediately, and maintains operational tempo. Technology matters in individual combat, but logistics, training, and numbers matter more in winning the air war. Germany's jets and late-war fighters prove that superior technology cannot overcome industrial collapse and fuel shortages. Which aircraft do you think was the most decisive? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for the next breakdown.